Welcome to the Court of History. I'm Sidney Blumenthal. The court is now in session. We are obsessed with the Epstein-Maxwell scandal that has begun to swallow up the Trump presidency. There are going to be hearings when the Congress returns. The victims are going to appear, according to members of the Democratic members of the Oversight Committee. And we have been subjected to the Maxwell charade of a testimony in which she seems and has been rehearsed to exonerate Donald Trump. She's an indicted perjurer, and Todd Blanche, Trump's personal attorney, who is the deputy attorney general, was there to create the cover-up and make sure she said the magic words, which are now repeated by the likes of Jim Jordan. So it's only heightened the scandal. So I'm here with Nina Burleigh, who is there's really no greater expert on this in the media than Nina. She's a journalist, historian, and author. She has delved for years deeply into the Epstein-Maxwell cases. She's the executive producer of a 3-part documentary about Maxwell, Epstein's Shadow, which you can see on Apple TV or Peacock. She's the author of The Trump Women, Part of the Deal, many other books, including a book on the history of the Smithsonian called The Stranger and the Statesman, James Smithson, John Quincy Adams, The Making of America's Greatest Museum, which we'll get to. And she's been a national political correspondent for Newsweek, covered the White House for Time magazine, and her Substack essential reading is called American Freak Show, which is perfectly named to cover what's going on under Trump. Welcome back, Nina, to the discussion of the Epstein-Maxwell-Trump scandal. So we've reviewed in part one the fantasies, the lies, and the tricks of Ghislaine Maxwell and her testimony, and Todd Blanche's mission accomplished to get her to call Trump a gentleman. But it doesn't seem to be working to end the scandal.
Well, let me just thank you for the introduction. I just want to say, I'm not trying to be too modest, but there are people who are more expert on this than I am. And I would say you must have Julie K. Brown is probably the premier expert on this subject.
We have had Julie on our podcast.
Good. Okay.
She's appeared in history, and anyone who's interested in what she has to say should go back and review those episodes.
Yeah, I mean, she really, we dug into Ghislaine, I think, probably maybe a bit more, but she's the expert on Epstein, all things Epstein down there in Florida.
Yes.
So what you're saying is it doesn't seem to be, what doesn't seem to be working? Remind me.
The whole setup for the Maxwell testimony was to put to rest
transparency
any question of involvement with Donald Trump and with Epstein, and
right.
It doesn't seem to have quelled the scandal.
Well, I don't, I'm right now I'm traveling, and I spent some time in the car yesterday listening to right-wing podcasts. And I actually listened to one where they were, they're Trump fans, 2 women who were just going to town on him over the Epstein, calling, that he was calling it an Epstein hoax. They were very upset about this U-turn, this reversal. But it was from a couple weeks ago, and I don't really have my finger on the pulse of what's going on now since, faux news and the right-wing influencers. Laura Loomer has been out there saying, well, see, he's just the most honorable president we've ever had. Whether the masses are going to let that fly. And I think as you said, if the Congress can keep the heat on, and if people can keep talking about it, maybe he can't conjure it away. Maybe they won't be able to conjure it away. But I think, you're in Washington. I was just in Chicago, where they're about to deploy armed men to wipe out the crime wave that doesn't exist there. So I think they they think that if they can do this kind of operation very quickly and deflect and distract with some arrests or some street violence, that the MAGA conspiracy theorists will have something else to talk about. And I think that's their game plan. But hopefully Congress will keep going. I mean, when this was all breaking, a friend of mine in Europe called and said, he was an older guy, and he said, I remember Watergate, and this is how Watergate started. And I said, you know what? I hope you're right. But, Watergate worked because only brought Nixon down because his own party decided that they couldn't stomach the criminality. And in this situation, I don't see those people stepping up in Congress. And I think, the one thing that is going on here also is that, the weird marks on his hand. A president does not seem to have his marbles all together at the moment. He's ailing, as you and I have discussed. He's grossly overweight. He seems really unhealthy, and I think it's possible that these, the minions behind him, the Stephen Millers and the Russell Vaught's, are looking ahead and thinking, what if something happens? And it may not be the Epstein thing that brings him down. It may be that his own health brings him down. And then you are stuck with the Vance. And as much as odious as Vance is, I don't think that he has the mesmerizing reality show TV star power to keep that coalition going. And that I think they're afraid of. And so I think they need to very quickly do certain things to sort of, make sure that we're not, going into 2026, they can pull some fast one and maintain.
Let me ask you about some characters, Nina, who you have written about, who are involved in this scandal that people may not have heard about. Here's somebody who has not been called before the oversight committee for their so-called hearings into the Epstein scandal, but somebody who knew Epstein, was in fact a business partner of his, was very close to Donald Trump, and close to a lot of other characters. His name is Paulo Zampoli. Oh. And you have written about him in your book, The Trump Women.
Not only did I write about him, I spent an afternoon with him.
Tell us, who is he and what did he tell you?
He's an Italian. He's a bon vivant, an Italian, a Euro trash Italian. And he was a model agent.
For who?
Well, he takes credit for bringing Melania to the United States. And what kind of a model agent was he? Well, I don't know. I mean, he's apparently one of these guys who was perfectly happy bringing these Eastern European women in, but he was willing to tell me that during that period post wall fall, where all these Eastern European women were coming into the market, who had self-commodified their beauty and were coming in here to now have access to the Western luxuries that they've been looking across the wall at for so long and longing for. They're now in New York. There were so many beauties that they couldn't all be models. So he had this sort of side category in his company where he called them, I think, people models. And they were basically that they would be dispatched to parties, and I was at New York's. I was in Manhattan parties where these people were there. There would just be these sylphs, these gorgeous women in beautiful clothes, just kind of standing around, and they're like wall decorations. And that those women, he thought, well, maybe some of them might have been, he certainly wasn't pimping them out, but that maybe some of them were here to find rich husbands. And he was very open about it. And there were more crazy things going on in that house. I mean, he was at that point he was a UN ambassador for, I think, Dominica, and his wife was a UN ambassador for Grenada. So they pretended like they were diplomats, and they basically were.
His wife was not his wife; it was his girlfriend,
the model, one of the models. But anyway, character, and he is the person who takes credit for introducing them at a Victoria's Secret party, I think. And again, it's all, this is all a big network. They're all meshed up and meshed with each other, these men moving beauties around and these beauties being exploited.
He knew Epstein, of course. He was close to Epstein.
Of course he knew Epstein. I'm sure they all knew Epstein.
He tried to buy elite models with Epstein as a partner in 2004, failed. Then went to work for Trump.
I mean, he's still working. He's still mobbed up with Trump. I think he's Trump's. He's got some title like emissary to Italy or something.
Trump has given him, every title except,
He probably knows where the bodies are buried with respect.
He's a trustee of the. He's on the board of the Kennedy Center now.
Yes, because culture.
He's special envoy to Italy, whatever that means. He's a special representative to Europe. He's, and probably the ambassador to Duck Soup.
Only the best people.
Yes. So let's talk about the lawyers who people may not know about. Who is Timothy Parlatore and Darren Indyk?
Okay. Well, when you said somebody close to Epstein who nobody talks about, I actually thought you were going to bring up Indyk. So I wrote about these guys in my Substack. You can look it up.
Right, in American Freak Show.
In the American Freak Show, we go into these three lawyers. I mean, backstory, Trump, one of his skills is that he has been able to access this bottomless supply of lawyers, American lawyers trained in our law, who are willing to go to Roy Cohn level misbehavior and bend the law to protect him. It's astonishing.
So who are these guys? Who are these two characters?
Parlatore is a Florida lawyer who represented Trump. He comes on the scene because he's representing Trump in the documents case, right? And
Mar-a-Lago, a national security documents case from the archives that he had kept.
Florida lawyer. He represents Trump, and curiously, 2 months after the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, he hires into his firm this guy Darren Indyk. And if you go to the law firm's website, you'll see they represent him as somebody with a long experience of working in a family office with large trust. And in fact, the family office was Epstein, and he was Epstein's almost lifelong attorney. And so now he's working with Parlatore, Trump's personal attorney in the documents case, which we know Eileen Cannon threw out, but for which they had him dead to rights. And so there's that weird connection. Now Parlatore shows up in Washington, walking keg sets down the halls of the Senate when he's going to
get there. Who someone sent him?
I am not sure how he got there, but that is something I'm not sure of. I just know that he is Hegseth's lawyer during that nomination period, and now he's one of the top advisors in the Pentagon with Hegseth. He's there with Hegseth. He's like Hegseth's guy, handler, probably holding the booze at bay.
So
or something.
Trump's, array of personal attorneys is all over the place.
Yes, they're all over. And I mean, the cabal, they're a claque of people willing, again, to go to the mat, to bend the law, break it. And so there's Parlatore, and he has now got Indyk on his firm. And then you have Todd Blanche, who, by the way, was, as you mentioned, was Trump's personal attorney in the Stormy Daniels case. Am I right? Not the fraud case. In the Stormy Daniels, which he lost. But before he represented Trump, Todd Blanche represented Manafort. So he's been in Trump crime world for a long time. But Blanche is trained as a Southern District of New York prosecutor. So he's one of these people who he wore the white hat, and then he saw there was better things to be had with the black hat, and he went over to Manafort and then Trump. So now private attorney Blanche is literally on the taxpayer payroll. He is our country's deputy attorney general. So personal attorney for Trump is Trump's deputy attorney general. And of course, that's why Trump, we already know why Trump got up the other day and said, I'm the top law enforcement in this country. I am the law. I am law enforcement. And so the private attorney, the line between private and representing the country is now blurred out completely. And that's why he can go down to Tallahassee and call what he's doing down there a proffer, which is a legal term that prosecutors use when they're dealing with criminal defendants, and pretend like he's doing something that's moving this case towards some kind of conclusion when all it is a PR stunt and an exercise in fake transparency. And as you said, it will make a terrific Broadway play.
Yeah, it was damage control. Now, Todd Blanche has a friend, and his name is David O. Marcus. And Blanche has appeared twice on his podcast and praised him and talked about their closeness. Who is David O. Marcus?
Well, the main thing I know about David O. Marcus is that he is a lifelong mentee of Alan Dershowitz, the man
who was Epstein's
buddy and lawyer, and Epstein, and also the man who Ghislaine Maxwell never saw in a bathrobe, strangely.
Right. And who is his client, Marcus's client?
He is Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney, and he was in the room with her during that proffer session.
Blanche and Marcus are buddies. Marcus is the
and they know each other. They're members of the same. They're buddies. They're the members of the same group of black hat lawyers. And interestingly, one thing we don't know about Ghislaine Maxwell, and maybe it's out there, but I don't know, is that she had a huge financial debt to the lawyers who handled her case in New York, and she was stiffing them when she went to jail. I don't know how they solved that, but now she's got this new attorney who is working on getting her a pardon openly.
Yeah. It seems to me that Dershowitz was promoting talking to her before this took place, and he seems to know everybody. He was saying she was the Rosetta Stone, Ghislaine Maxwell, and people needed to talk to her. And of course, this was a setup for her to call Trump a gentleman and so on, and was part of the damage control and the cover-up. And you've got Marcus, his protege. You've got Todd Blanche, Marcus's pal, and you've got Maxwell.
Yeah, it's a cabal of dirtbag lawyers.
Yeah. So where is this going? Where do you think this whole Epstein scandal goes right now?
Well, as I said, I think they're just trying to the military in the cities thing is the ultimate distraction here, and I don't know where it's going to go. I think that if the Congress manages, if they get a couple Republicans to either be so pressured by their MAGA followers on this to do the right thing and haul some of these folks down into televised hearings, and they run those hearings for a while, it's not going to be good for Donald. But if they stick together, and they have so far, because they're afraid, in addition to being craven and complicit in other ways, we may not see. It may end up that we don't get any answers, and that this becomes this thing, and it may well, no matter what happens, the Epstein conspiracy will rival the JFK conspiracy theories in I think in longevity. I think that it'll be many, many years where people will still be trying to figure out, like, what exactly was he doing? What was it? What was the involvement? I mean, we're right now working on Wexner and Israel, and this kind of the timing of certain things that were going on with Wexner.
Who's we?
My assistant and I have a terrific researcher.
So you're engaged in some investigative reporting, even
yes. Now. I'll be reporting on this. I'm going to write it tonight. A new episode with respect to Wexner
on your Substack, American Freak Show.
Yes.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.